Hello and welcome back. We are back. It's a new year. It's a new part of the second half of the season. It's a whole new world. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Breaking the Fourth Wall. I am your host, Chris Wilde, and with me, as always, is my right hand, which usually catches what my left hand is doing, Mr. Brian Miller.
Oh, I gotta be your right hand. That's the one. No, can I be your left hand?
Oh, if you're my left hand, Dan's got to be my right, and you know that.
That's fair enough. I'd rather be the one turning the page of the Dirty Magazine instead of the other one.
Well, my left hand is the other one.
Yeah, I was going to say that the way he described it, in that particular case, I'd rather be the right hand because the right hand is catching what the left hand is doing. So. It's like, I see what you're doing over there. Yeah, kind of nice.
Oh, man. Well, the whole entire reason you were going to be the left hand, Dan, is because you're bald, and what's in my left hand is also bald. And Mr. Dan Laurie.
I think you really need to work on your introductions because you just got finished saying to him that the left hand was... Never mind. Just give up.
The left hand is spanking, the right hand is catching. I'm left-handed, people.
I never knew that. I never knew that either. I would go back to your right hand.
Oh, man, yes, we can never undo that conversation. All right, guys, we are back. How was your holidays for everybody out there?
Oh, busy. Yeah. Busy as hell. Actually, my daughter just had a daughter of her own.
Yes, that is true. Congratulations, Grandpa.
Thank you. For the fourth time, so yes.
Yes, but it's the first time on air that we say it.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm a grandpa for the fourth time.
Ah, true. That's true.
You know, people on .com are going to be very confused about this conversation. Right hands, left hands, first times, fourth times.
Well, let's move on to things that aren't so confusing then. Let's go ahead and get on to the news right off the bat here. First and foremost, let's go ahead and talk about the fact that we have a couple movies coming up in May. Of course, the biggest one coming out is going to be the Avengers Infinity Wars. I forget the exact release date. But it's also, and of course, we got Solo, a Star Wars Stewie. Solo, a Star Wars Stewie. Really, we gotta get rid of that freaking Star Wars story and just go back to calling it anthologies. In May, at least tentatively right now, Ron Howard is still releasing Solo, a Star Wars story in May. But as recently announced by Fox and Disney, Deadpool 2 has moved up its release date to May 18th. The yet untitled movie. So really that seems to me like it's going to be a three-way battle for basically three Disney properties for the number one position of the box office of that month.
Yeah, they are going to be kind of cannibalizing themselves. Well, hold on. If we do the math, if one of them's coming out on May 18th, that means if you go 2 weeks in front of that, that means a movie can come out on May the 4th, which, if they have any sense, should be the Star Wars movie, so that the Star Wars movie comes out on May the 4th, so that everybody can say, May the 4th be with you.
Well, they're not doing that.
Solo is slated for the 25th. Avengers Infinity War is actually on May the 4th. And then Deadpool is the 18th, but I don't think we have anything for the 11th.
Well, the major thing about Solo coming out on May 25th, Dan, is that is the exact 41st anniversary of when the first film ever released in 1977.
Oh, cool.
So that is kind of a weird significance. Like normally I would agree with you that it should be May the 4th if you're going to go in May, but but the 25th seems more poetic.
Yes.
But again, you're still looking at a week to 2 weeks in difference for all these films in the same month. And any of them alone is their own blockbuster. Solo maybe a little tentatively less right now with the way everybody's feeling about Last Jedi. We'll talk about that later. But, you know, you're talking about the much, much anticipated Avengers Infinity War. Pretty much anything Star Wars is always much anticipated, even when it's a movie you really didn't want, like Solo, a Star Wars story. And now you're throwing the sequel to the most successful rated R comic book movie ever into the mix. I mean, how crazy is May going to be? And really, out of the three properties, who's going to come out on top?
Avengers. Yeah, Avengers. Like, as much as I want to say Star Wars, it's fact. Avengers is going to annihilate Star Wars and Deadpool. Now, that's not really much of a competition between those three. But let's look at Deadpool and Star Wars. Which one of those do you think is going to actually come out on top?
Honestly, I still say that Star Wars is going to overtake all of them. Well, first off, I trust Ryan Howard, and I reaffirmed that today watching one of his better movies, one of his greatest movies, actually, in my opinion, Apollo 13. I reaffirmed to myself that I think Solo is going to surprise us.
I don't know. Well, as much as I want to agree with you, I really don't. There's a lot of things that need to happen for that to happen. This trailer coming out this week has got to be just freaking awesome. It's got to be mind-blowing good. It's got to start putting a lot of people's minds at ease as far as what the Han Solo movie's been through so far. And it's got to put their minds at ease with what's coming. And Star Wars, if I had to guess, look, Han Solo, we done box office predictions.
What's that?
Are we doing box office predictions for these three? Because you know Avengers is going to be over.
If you want to, go ahead.
Oh man, I'm going to say Solo gets 450 to 500 mil worldwide.
That's significantly less than what Rogue One pulled, being the first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, see, that's interesting because I was making comparisons in my mind about what this would be like. And I would say the Avengers Infinity Wars movie coming out would be similar to, obviously, the other two Avengers movies. So let's just say whatever the two Avengers movies made, okay? Deadpool, in my mind, is similar to Logan. And the Solo movie is similar to Rogue One. So it would be like saying, what happens if the first Avengers movie came out, Logan came out, and Rogue One came out all at the same time? You're talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is arguably the biggest thing in Hollywood right now, and you're talking about the flagship movie of all movies. So, because this is, Avengers 3 and 4 is supposed to be where everything in the entire Marvel universe comes together. So, I'm going to go out and say Avengers comes in first because Deadpool was so popular, even with people that weren't really into comic books, because it was so funny and it was so raunchy and it was so, I don't think a lot of people saw it coming. I think that's actually going to be number 2. And I think Solo comes in 3, but that's like saying it came in 3. It was the third best movie of the entire year. That's how good I think all 3 of them are going to be. I think people are actually going to be saving their money to go watch all 3 movies as if it was Christmas.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that completely. But see, I guess my opinion is different. Like, I'm a Marvel fan. Of course, I'm looking forward to Avenger Infinity War. I absolutely adored Deadpool, so I cannot wait for the sequel. But the Star Wars fan in me just has to believe that Star Wars will overtake, even if it is laying my bets on something like Solo, which again, I don't have an issue with Solo. It's just not the movie I would have made. I don't need a backstory of Han Solo, and I think that's one of the things hurting against it. And of course, the other thing that's hurting against it is the mixed reviews of The Last Jedi right now. However, we look at how box office smashing Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rogue One have been. I can't imagine Solo, even with doing less, would do a significant amount less, where it wouldn't still be, a box office success. Especially with a director like Ryan Howard behind it. Now, when it was Lords and Miller and they were making basically, an Animal House movie out of Han Solo, yeah, that would have killed it. But Ron Howard knows how to make a at least a sci-fi adventure movie, and knows what it's like to work with Lucasfilm, because remember, he made Willow.
Right. Well, first of all, I remember Ron Howard when he was Opie, so I've been a big fan of him since we're actually around the same age. So yeah. But what is your actual question here? Is it, will it be a box office success, or where is it going to place in those three movies?
Well, no, my question was, where does it place in the movies? I was explaining my reasonings of why I look at it as number one. And the main reason is this may, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe the nostalgia of Star Wars in me, mixed with the fact that I look at it as kind of this metaphor for this coming month, is like you take the biggest movie franchises of pretty much all time and put them on a month together. You got, I hate saying it this way because people will probably blast me in the comments section. How dare you compare Solo to the original trilogy? But for this metaphor, bear with it. You have the original trilogy Star Wars versus the first three Lord of the Rings movies versus Harry Potter. Is basically what Deadpool, Infinity Wars, and Solo is like in this month. It's like you have Disney just turned around and said, here's a 1, 2, 3 punch. Let's see which one lands the hardest. And to me, as much as I love Lord of the Rings, as much as I love Harry Potter, I'm more of a Star Wars fan. So as much as I love Deadpool and as much as I love Infinity War, I gotta believe Star Wars is going to pull it out.
I respectfully disagree, because the Avengers is a known quantity, which is, I mean, we've been literally going 15 rounds with this, and this is like the final round for all intents and purposes. Deadpool was a smash hit, so that's, again, a known quantity. And from what you guys just both said, Star Wars is the final movie coming out of the three. So you have something that's going to be a question in a lot of people's minds, because there is, it's a prequel, and we all know how well prequels do, okay? It's not the actual person who played Han Solo playing the part. So there's a lot of question marks, and it's the final movie of the three, and how much money are people going to have left after already going to see Avengers and Deadpool?
Okay. All right. Well, final thoughts on this. I mean, how close? All right. Let's put it. Let me ask you this in this question. We'll get final thoughts this way, and I'll start with you, Dan, and then we'll go to Brian. Based on your predictions of, since both you guys pretty much put Avengers first, Deadpool second, Solo third, how far of a gap between the movies do you think it will be financially, as far as, like, say, opening weekend predictions? Like, do you think Avengers will be number one by $300 million or something of that nature? And, like, how close of a gap do you think each movie is going to be from the other one when they open?
Honestly, I don't think there's going to be that much of a gap at all, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the momentum of the Avengers is actually going to continue on with Deadpool and Solo, because basically, if you're watching TV, okay, in my mind, this is what Disney did. For years and years and years, when there were only 3 major channels, the 8 o'clock was always the most popular show of the night, okay? And what they would do, say it was like All in the Family or MASH or Cheers or Frasier, something that was on, each one of them were on for at least 10 years, the Carol Burnett Show, whatever. That would be your 8 o'clock show. So in my mind, the Avengers is coming out first in order to be your 8 o'clock show. Then you have your 8:30 show, which is Deadpool. So people like the Avengers, and they're going to be like, oh, Deadpool's coming out next week. You know, I love the Avengers. We need to go see Deadpool next. You know, you go plop down your money for Deadpool. Deadpool becomes a hit. Then everybody's like, oh my God, Solo's coming out next. You know, and so Solo is your 9 o'clock show on, honestly, it's been too long for me to remember like what the most popular night. I think it was Thursday nights on ABC for the longest time. But you know, so Solo's like your 9 o'clock show on Thursday nights on ABC when ABC was ruling the world. And so the question becomes, are you happy with being the 3rd most popular show on the most popular night of the week? Most people would say, fuck yeah. I think all 3 shows have the potential of doing extremely well, maybe one if not 2 of them breaking box office, okay? But I think I don't think they're going to hurt each other. I think the dice that Disney is rolling is that one or 2 of them is going to carry the 3rd one. So I think these 3 shows have the possibility of being, if they even keep stats like this, the shows that breaks the bank as far as, you know, box office hits 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Because Star Wars, Deadpool, and Marvel Studios, I mean, they're all considered Disney, correct? Even though Marvel Studios has its own thing, it's still part of Disney. And Marvel Studios had something to do with Deadpool, even though they're sharing it with somebody else, either Sony or 20th Century Fox, I forget which one.
It's Fox.
Fox?
Which Fox was just bought by Disney, so now Fox is owned by Disney. But Marvel Studios, just like Lucasfilm, Disney writes the checks to them, but they still are considered their own separate entity.
Okay. But at the end of the day, so you're right, so they did just buy it. So at the end of the day, really, Disney owns all 3 properties. So this might be like the Beatles had several top 40 hits at the same time. This might be May of 2018 might be the day that, or the month that Disney breaks records as far as having 3 blockbuster hits all in the same month.
Well, see Brian, this is, you know, playing off of what he said, it kind of brought a thought to my point. With Deadpool coming out just a week before Solo, is this a ploy, as he said, from Disney saying, here's a 1, 2, 3 punch, let's really go for the record of most money made in a month? Or is it more like, let's put these 2 out because we don't really have confidence in Solo?
Well, the whole Disney Fox deal, that's Deadpool 2's been in production way longer than the Disney Fox deal's been going on. So, and technically, the Fox Disney merger isn't actually official until I think August. I think August when it actually officially takes place. So, at that point, they're not going to be able to say Deadpool 2 is actually under their umbrella. But I don't know. Like, I'm looking at box office numbers right now for Deadpool. And worldwide it made $783 million. And it was kind of the surprise hit. Nobody thought it was going to be that good as it was. There's a very real possibility the second one could make that same
miraculously behind this Han Solo movie. I don't see it doing that well, especially with kind of a little bit of a backlash we got from Last Jedi. And there's a lot of Disney haters now. There really are. And more than I ever really thought there would be. But the Han Solo movie right now has got a lot going against it. And they're really going to have to, this trailer is going to have to be something phenomenal for them to turn that around. So I'm going to stick with my ranking. Avengers, it's going to be over $1 billion. That's pretty obvious. It's 10 years in the making. It's been leading up to this. Deadpool 2, I really think Deadpool 2 is going to do better than Han Solo. I really think so. What was Rogue One's ending run? Like, what did it make box office like?
I'm not sure. Let me look that up. Continue talking while I'm looking it up.
Well, so Ryan, are you saying that you think both Avengers and Deadpool can make over 100?
Over what? Over $1 billion?
Yeah. Because how much did you say? Hold on. How much did you say Deadpool made? 83?
783 million.
83 million. Okay. And you said Avengers made over 100 million.
Oh. Avengers total?
Well, either one or two, not both of them at the same together.
Well, there's two because we can kind of go based off of that one better since that was the last one. I'm looking at it now.
Because it sounds like you're saying to me that Avengers and Deadpool have the possibility of both making over 100 million.
Over $1 billion. No, I don't think Deadpool will make over $1 billion. Avengers 2 made $1.4 billion worldwide.
Oh, 1.4 billion. Okay.
Yeah, and then the first Avengers, let me look at the first one also.
Well, while you're looking that up, to answer your question, Rogue One worldwide made $1 billion, 56 million, 57,273.
Okay, well, I didn't actually think Rogue One broke $1 billion.
Yeah,
so I guess it did.
Rogue One broke $1 billion.
All right, so
Avengers and Rogue One broke $1 billion?
Yeah.
Yeah. Avengers 1 made $1.5 billion.
Okay.
And then Avengers 2 made $1.4 billion. So Avengers 3 is going to be 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 billion dollars. That's total. That's pretty obvious at this point, especially considering how many successful movies we've had leading up to it at this point. So that's going to be $1 billion movie. Man, I don't know. Chris, you might be right, man. Han Solo might at least beat Deadpool.
That's what I'm saying. I think Solo is going to be the sleeper. Now, I'm even arguing with myself on whether Solo is going to overtake Avengers because of all the backlash that Disney's going through with the Star Wars universe at the moment. But I'm pretty confident Solo, just on the fact that it is a Star Wars movie, can and probably will overtake Deadpool, no matter how great Deadpool is. Which kind of goes back to what Dan said before, which is being third place in that lineup is not necessarily like an insult.
Right. Well, see, and everything inside me doesn't want to say this, I want it to be Star Wars, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point is the most successful modern-day movie franchise there is.
Yes.
Bar none. It is the most successful there has ever been. Well, I don't want to say has ever been, but as of today, as modern day. Star Wars was for its time. I don't want to say it's the most successful as of now because there's a lot of opinions getting. There are a lot more people more opinionated about Last Jedi than they were, Civil War. So,
yeah, but you know what?
I'm going to say Avengers and then Han Solo and Deadpool.
Yeah, but you know what? The people that are naysaying the modern Star Wars movies are the same people that bitched about the prequels, or the same people that bitched about everything under the sun. They're original trilogy purists, which means they think it should be episode 4, 5, and 6 despecialized, and that's it. No more Star Wars movies. Or you have the idiots that I don't like this because it's not like the 40 years of books that I've spent my adolescent life reading because I couldn't get a girlfriend. You're talking about whiners who are just mad because they didn't get their way. There are still plenty of people like yourself, myself, and Dan who actually like what Disney is doing. May not be perfect, but it's still good. I don't think Star Wars is as dead or as in trouble as people want to make it out to be.
I would kill, probably my food, because I don't want to go on air saying I would kill somebody. So my food. And if you think about it, your food has to be dead before you eat it. Otherwise, you're kind of weird, or you're eating sushi. But I would kill if Disney would actually take over all of the DC/Justice League characters and Star Trek, so that we could have a good DC movie and a good Star Trek movie.
But see, then you would have these people that hate Disney so much that they never watch a movie again for the rest of their life and shit on everything that comes out. Everything.
All right, well let me give a dose of reality to all the Disney haters. We were all children once, all of us, including Dan. I mean, back in those days, he had to walk 4 miles uphill in the snow with a boner, both ways, and stuff of that nature. And the only toys he had were sticks and rocks. But all of us grew up on Disney movies. All of us loved Disney. Disney programmed all of our lives. Is it really that hard to believe that some of our favorite franchises are being produced by Disney? And here's another one. Let me blow your mind with something else. Do you know the original Crow movie was basically Disney? Did you know that majority of Kevin Smith's first couple movies were Disney? Because they were Dimension Miramax films. And guess who owned Dimension Miramax?
Yeah, true story.
Get over yourselves, man. Just because it's Walt Disney, it's Walt Disney Corporation. It's not Walt Disney the Entertainer. Not everything's going to wind up being Disney XD or iCarly / Hannah Montana / High School Musical story bases. They still allow people to make movies the way they want to make movies. Now, when it comes to Star Wars, when it comes to Marvel, Disney writes checks and then in turn receives checks when the proceeds from the movies come back. But Lucasfilm Limited is still Lucasfilm Limited, not Disney's Lucasfilm Limited. Marvel Studios is still Marvel Studios. So in other words, if there's a terrible Star Wars movie, you blame Kathleen Kennedy. If there's a terrible Marvel Studios movie, you blame Kevin Feige. You don't blame Disney. All Disney did was hand the money over and say, go ahead.
So you're right.
These people need to get over themselves and understand that, you know what? The same way as Dan explained how he turns off his comic book knowledge to be able to sit down and enjoy a Marvel film or even a DC film for what it is. Us Star Wars fans, I'm speaking to every single one of them, and majority of them, I think, have this ability the same way that Brian and I do. We can have fun speculating. We can have fun with the 30 years of EU lore or 40 years of EU lore and everything else, but at the end of the day, we got to remember that this isn't our story. This is just something we enjoy. So let's just enjoy the ride of what we're being told.
Yeah.
I don't care if you don't like it. Star Wars ain't for everybody. Some people like movies that some people don't, even within Star Wars, or like Star Trek, as Dan could attest. There are people that like Final Frontier. And that's arguably one of the worst fucking Star Trek movies ever made, but there are fans of it. It made some money.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them any less a Star Wars fan. There are people who are fans of Attack of the fucking Clones. And that was arguably the worst of the Star Wars saga. That doesn't make those fans any less of fans of Star Wars. People need to shut the fuck up. If you don't like it, fine, you didn't like it. But blasting other people or expecting Disney to retcon shit or whatever else for it is just it's stupid. It's stupid and it's childish, and it's literally a child standing in a corner, stomping his feet, holding his breath because he didn't get his way.
See, at the end of the day, I think this is the criteria for enjoying anything, is that it has to be something that you can identify with, okay? Now, the reason why I love Star Trek and Star Wars so much is because I identify with the idea of the iconic hero. I'm sorry, I don't care how much you make fun of William Shatner. Who didn't want to be Captain James T. Kirk, at least for a day at some point growing up, okay?
Me, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker.
What's that?
Me, because I wanted to be Luke Skywalker.
Well, that's what I was about to say next. Get over yourself. And who didn't want to be Luke Skywalker from day one, the first time that they ever saw him wielding a lightsaber blind and then kissing the girl even though he wound up being her sister? You're talking about iconic heroes. You're talking about Star Trek and Star Wars being the bar, okay? I would argue that maybe, just maybe, if Guardians of the Galaxy continues to be as good as it is on a regular basis, that they could eventually be in the conversation with shows like Star Trek and Star Wars. But that being said, it's like, I don't care how much you like Stargate. I don't care how much you like Babylon 5. I don't care how much you like Battlestar Galactica. They're good, but they're not in the stratosphere of Star Trek and Star Wars. The same way, I can't even think of a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or whatever they're called. I can't even think of another super heroic
franchise
team of any kind. Who?
A franchise that would even compare?
Yes, to the Justice League or the Avengers. So, the Justice League disappointed some people. Why? Like, I watched the Justice League. Now, mind you,
Marvel movie.
What's that?
Yeah, I truly believe Justice League failed because people have this mentality that if it's not made by Marvel and it's a comic book movie, it isn't worth watching.
Well, see, I
have to agree with you. I have to agree with you because I watched the Justice League movie for just it being the Justice League movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Did I expect it to be a Marvel movie? No. Did I expect it to be DC comic canon? No. I watched it for what it is, and I thought it was a good movie. I'm sorry. As much as I love Marvel, Marvel does not have the one thing that DC has, and that's Superman.
Batman.
Superman. Look, Justice League, like, I'm one of those few people, like, I really did really enjoy Justice League. And I tell people this, and they look at me like I have a penis growing out of my forehead. I had more fun watching Justice League than I did the first Avengers the first time. I had more fun with it. Because I'm a Superman guy through and through. Superman can kick Batman's ass any day of the week.
Except for at any point in any of the comics that they faced off, Batman always won. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, Superman could kick Batman's ass.
Yeah, because of Batman's fucking kryptonite. That's the same. Like, Batman beat up his kryptonite is like Superman. The only way that fight would be fair is if Batman can use his kryptonite, but Superman can reject Batman's polio first. It does the exact same fucking thing a human as kryptonite does to him. That's the only way that's a fair fight. But anyway,
look, even in Batman v Superman, the only way Superman was able to save his own life from Batman was to pull out the mother card.
Well, yeah, Superman really did hold back, and he had kryptonite in his system.
But he had to pull out the mother card. Batman is the ultimate. Look, we could have this argument, but the end of the day, Batman is the ultimate superhero. Batman is the ultimate superhero. Anyway, go ahead and make your point.
But anyway,
Batman is the ultimate superhero? Batman doesn't have any powers.
Which makes him that much cooler.
Okay, Superman's my boy, and I have a lot of fun watching Justice League, but most of the critiques I saw of the movie was stuff that, didn't have as much humor in it as Avengers did, or as Iron Man did, or Guardians of the Galaxy. And so everything I saw about Justice League that was a critique of it was comparing it to Marvel. And you can't compare those two. They're apples and oranges. Yes, they're the same genre, which would be, apples and oranges or fruit. That's what they are. But Marvel's an apple and DC's an orange. You can't compare those two. Alright? Like, it's just, people, like I said earlier, people have this mentality that if it isn't a Marvel movie, then they want it to fail. They don't care about it unless it has Marvel Studios at the beginning of it, or Fox. Or if it's not X-Men or anything Avengers, nobody cares.
No, I agree with that, and I'm picking on you for the Superman thing. I like Superman, Batman. Besides Spider-Man in the Marvel universe, and I'm speaking comic book wise, Spider-Man, Scarlet Spider, the Spider-Verse, if you will. Quite honestly, growing up, I was always more of a DC guy. Spider-Man was like one of my all-time favorite superheroes, but I preferred reading DC comics, Superman, Batman, Justice League, stuff of that nature. I'm one of those people where it's like, I didn't mind Batman v Superman. Was it the greatest movie I ever seen? No. What ruined Batman v Superman for me was not the story, was not even Martha. It was really Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. He just did not fit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
With Justice League, my only real critique to Justice League was Ezra Miller as the Flash. Because, and I'm being fair in this, I know a lot of people enjoyed his performance, but to me,
I thought it was funny as hell.
that's kind of the problem. I never looked at the Flash because of the CW show as that type of comedy relief, kind of a pussy character. I was expecting more to see what's his name, Grant Gustinson or whatever, who plays the Flash on the CW. More of that style
I see what you're
Flash.
saying, but if you remember DC history, I think the problem is in the movie they said the Flash was Barry Allen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's the problem because you're expecting him to be Barry Allen, like on the TV show and on the comic books where he's a very serious character. The problem is they should have made him Wally West because Wally West was a little goofy like that. A lot more than Barry Allen. So you're expecting one character and you get a different one and everybody's like, WTF. I think the same way that Quicksilver literally, stole every scene he was in the Marvel universe, the Flash kind of did the same thing. There needed to be some kind of comic relief, and they decided to give it to the Flash.
Which Quicksilver though? The Quicksilver. No, both of them, because remember there was two separate Quicksilvers. There was Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, and then there was Quicksilver in X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yes, and in both of them, they stole every scene. You mean to tell me that when the Quicksilver and the X-Men is sitting there telling Mystique that Magneto is his father, and Mystique's like, what? That wasn't an hysterical scene?
No, the standouts for Quicksilver to me was the slow motion scenes. In Days of Future Past when they broke in to get Magneto and he was running around and pushing bullets out of the way and stuff of that nature. And then of course,
and even the slow motion and Apocalypse was good too.
Yeah. And then in the other one, he's like drinking Cokes and eating pizzas and stuff like that while he's running around. Like that was very standoutish to me. I think so, but otherwise, within both movies, except for that one sequence, Quicksilver really was like two really separate characters. That was the one inconsistency I really didn't like within the Marvel Universe as far as that character was concerned. They were two completely different characters.
Well, because they had to be. I mean, I want to make sure I get this right. You said it's Fox, right?
Yeah, Fox owned X-Men at the time.
Owned the rights
to Quicksilver, which is why Quicksilver shows up in Age of Ultron and dies, because they literally had to borrow their own character for a while, and only for a while before Fox got mad. Now that Disney owns Fox, I'm willing to bet, and this is one of the predictions I'm making, and well, it's not a spoiler because it's a prediction, but I think Quicksilver comes back. I think when Thanos changes reality and the Scarlet Witch changes it back, one of the things she's going to do is bring back her brother. Now, whether he stays undead, I don't know, but I guarantee you we're going to see Quicksilver in the Avengers movie.
Do you think that'll cause a Marvel equivalent of the Flashpoint?
No, because it's going in two different directions. In the Marvel comic universe, at one point the Scarlet Witch actually alters reality completely, and makes Magneto basically the king of the world. And all the mutants are in power, so it's Magneto, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver are basically like, I know there's no king of England, it's a queen, but for the purposes of our conversation, Magneto is sort of like the king of England, and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are like the prince and princess. I mean, they literally rule the world. And then when Doctor Strange and the Avengers come for Scarlet Witch, she changes it so that almost all of the mutants actually lose their powers. So, will something like that happen in Infinity Wars? I don't think so, but I think there might be something similar, because remember, one of the Infinity Gems, its power, time, the soul, reality, and I forget what the other two are. They'll come to me. But power, time, space, the soul, reality, and the sixth one will come to me. So, and the Scarlet Witch alters reality, and I think that the gem that created the Scarlet Witch and the Vision might be the reality gem. So, there's going to be a fight with Thanos and the Scarlet Witch for reality. And I think that's when Quicksilver comes back. It might also be when Adam Warlock shows up, although I'm hearing rumors that Adam Warlock is not going to be in the Infinity Wars, which makes no sense, because in the comics, Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock and the Avengers are what leads the fight against Thanos in the Infinity Wars. Well, so to have a major character not in it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, here's the point. Like you just stated, in the comic books, it's obviously majorly different from the movies. You got to remember, when Infinity Wars was first announced, it was originally supposed to be Infinity Wars Part 1 and Part 2. Right. But then they decided to just call this movie Infinity Wars, and then the next movie something completely different. But I guarantee you, it's still the concept is still the same. It's probably still going to tie in. And if we're going to see Adam Warlock, who, spoiler alert for anybody not seeing Guardians of the Galaxy 2, it was basically teased in the end credit scenes of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He's probably going to show up in Avengers 4. The events of Infinity War is going to bring Adam Warlock in by 4, I think.
Right.
How they play that off, I don't know, but that's my personal opinion of it. But then again, they may surprise you and have him pull in anyway. But here's let's go ahead and move on real quick, because we spent a lot of time on this. I got a little bit more comic book information before we move on to some other news. Besides the major announcement of Deadpool moving up to May 18th, being pushed up to May 18th, they also announced the New Mutants, Joss Boone's horror-tingled take on Marvel's teen heroes, gets pushed back 10 months to jumping from April 13th to February 22nd, 2019. And then also, they finally announced a release date for Gambit being Valentine's Day 2019. Oh, I'm sorry, June 7th, 2019. Excuse me, June 7th. They got pushed from the original concept of February 14th to June 7th.
About time, God. They've been working on that for like 3-4 years.
Well, here's the deal. I also heard rumor, I mean, I don't have it up here right now, but I heard rumor that Gambit lost its third director already.
That's not one I've got a lot of faith for.
At this point, I think Channing Tatum should just turn around and say, look, I'll fucking direct it. I mean, he's the one that really wants to do the movie. It worked for Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool. He pushed and pushed and pushed till he got his way. Maybe Channing should do that.
Hey, not to cut you off, Chris, but Marvel Studios just released their first image, their first official image of Ant-Man and Wasp from the Ant-Man sequel. Like literally just now.
Wow, really? Well,
yeah.
that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like breaking news or anything. It's nothing we've never seen, but.
I'm gonna look that up while we're talking. So, guys, what do you think about the pushback of both New Mutants and Gambit, and the fact that it's finally officially announced something about Gambit and not just in pre-production?
Well, I'm kind of shocked for even hearing anything at all about Gambit. I really didn't think that one would get off the ground after this rocky, cold-blooded start. As far as the New Mutants goes, I don't know. I'm not that big on the whole X-Men thing anymore. I wasn't a big fan of Apocalypse. I mean, I'll watch New Mutants, and it's supposed to be a different kind of film than what we're used to with X-Men, but it's not something I'm chomping at the bit for to see, and I'm not losing my mind over it.
Okay. Dan, since you're more of our resident comic book guy, or comic book hero guy.
I think from a business standpoint it makes sense, because if Disney just bought Fox and they're bringing the New Mutants and Gambit into the same universe as all the rest of their heroes, they probably pushed it back to say, all right, let's make sure that when we introduce these brands that everything fits seamlessly. That's a big deal with Marvel Studios, is that everything has to fit into everything else. The rumor that I just heard today was that eventually there will be a crossover between the Marvel film universe and the Marvel TV universe. When that's going to happen is probably going to be after Infinity Wars is over, but it is going to happen. So maybe they're looking at everything and saying, all right, let's make sure everything makes sense. That would be my take on it.
Well, see, to me that makes a lot of sense, and that's one thing I'll applaud Marvel over DC about. One of the biggest things I hated about the DCEU is that it doesn't recognize its TV counterpart. Everything that's happening on The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow and Supergirl does not exist in the DCEU. And I think that's a waste, because I think they're telling better stories on the TV show. And I think the characters are being better represented on the TV shows. I really think that's a waste. And if Marvel is saying, well, we're going to recognize Shane from The Walking Dead as the Punisher, and the guy they have playing Daredevil right now, and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and all that stuff, the Defenders and all that stuff, and they're going to exist within the MCU, that's brilliant. That allows so much story to be told, not just in movies, but in TV, and have so much tie-in with each other. To me, it's stupid to not do it that way.
Well, I think the difference between Marvel and DC in the end of the day is that Marvel has always been the same comic universe. Everybody always existed in the same universe. And I mean, with the obvious exceptions of, like Excalibur, when their job was to visit alternate universes. But there's always been one Prime universe. There's never been like DC, like Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there's a Justice League and a Justice Society, and they used to visit each other annually, and blah blah blah. Dude, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes they ever made is when they said, "Oh, there's all these different types of Superman and Supergirl and Batman and Wonder Woman." There should be one Superman, one Batman, one Supergirl, one Wonder Woman. Period. End of sentence. Now, you want to visit alternate universes and, this thing changed here and that thing changed there, fine. But there needs to be one prime universe. And DC still hasn't learned its lesson because, as you just said, Chris, there's two different Flashes, there's two different Superman. I'm excited over the fact that there's going to be a Teen Titans in the DC TV universe, but at the same time, I'm not as excited as if Marvel were to say there's going to be I don't know what would be the equivalent of the Teen Titans. I don't know if there is one. Avengers Next. Because if there's an Avengers Next TV show, then I'm more excited about that because there might be a possibility of the Young Avengers, or from Avengers Next, actually popping up in a cameo in the cinematic universe. So, it's a shame that DC, it was even though it's only a couple of years, the originators of superheroes still doesn't know how to handle its own brand.
Well, I mean, even if it's not a cameo, just even the mention of characters. I mean, Doctor Strange was mentioned in the original Iron Man. Long before they even had a conceptual idea of even doing a Doctor Strange movie. The fact that they could turn around and mention about a particular action that happened in an episode of The Punisher in a movie. To me, it's just it ties that universe together and broadens it that much more. That episode I watched a month ago on The Punisher actually had some sort of impact in the new Avengers movie that I'm watching. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the way I've always... Kevin Feige has come out and said that as far as Marvel's TV and their movies go, he said as far as he's concerned, and he's the one in charge of everything Marvel Studios, as far as the movies are concerned, the TV shows aren't part of the universe, but the people who make the TV shows do their best to keep it in that universe, but the films themselves don't acknowledge the Netflix series or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. Kevin Feige has come out and said, as far as we're concerned, Agent Coulson is still dead. He did die in the first Avengers movie. He never came back. So they're in the same universe, but not everybody is kind of on the same kind of page, if you know what I mean. Right.
Well, that's true. That's actually one of the things of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't like. I mean, I like the actor who plays Agent Coulson. I like the character of Agent Coulson, but I definitely disagreed with the fact that they brought him back. They really should have. They gave him a nice death, and his death served a very good purpose of getting the Avengers together. Granted, through Nick Fury's lie, but getting the Avengers to actually work as a team, it served a purpose, and I think it kind of goes back to our Last Jedi statement about Rose ruining Finn's moment. I think bringing Coulson back even for a TV show kind of ruined his Avenger moment.
I have a question for you guys. What if that's not the same Agent Coulson?
Well, I mean, the Marvel multiverse, it may be the same Coulson, but from a different alternate universe.
Well, then the reason why I asked the question is because if you've ever seen any of the TV episodes, the character is 180 degrees away from the one played in the cinematic universe, and it's almost like I forget what they're called, but in the comic books, S.H.I.E.L.D. actually has androids that are dead ringers for the actual human beings. So Nick Fury has many a time sent out a Nick Fury android
to serve the purposes, so that when in one of the
Sorry.
comic books, Nick Fury supposedly dies, but then you find out no, it was just his android doppelganger. So maybe the Coulson in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that android doppelganger, because Coulson really is dead. He died in the Avengers movie. It would make a lot of sense because it's still Marvel Comics continuity. It fits the pattern because that happens more in S.H.I.E.L.D. than in any other place. That you think somebody's dead and it was just an android twin. But the character, the personality of the person is the giveaway that it wasn't the real person in the first place. Because let's face it, the Coulson in the Avengers movie was a little bit of a dweeb, okay? And this guy is so badass in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that I actually don't like him as much as I did that character in the movie.
Okay. Well, that's definitely fair enough. No, I agree, and that actually brings up a very interesting point. It makes me want to go back onto Netflix and watch some of the past episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again to see the comparison you brought up, because that's very interesting. Moving on, though, because we are starting to run low on time here for this episode. Star Trek Discovery has made its return.
Yep.
Much to the chagrin of anybody who actually respects Star Trek. Dan, I know you've been keeping up. How do you feel about the reveal that we pretty much predicted on Talking Trek?
I'm not surprised since we did predict it on Talking Trek. In fact, as soon as I found out that that's what happened, my first words were, "We were right!" So at the end of the day, that's the only way. That's the only place they could go with it. It's the only thing that made any sense. Okay, I am absolutely ecstatic over the fact that they're in the mirror universe now, because it gives them everything that they want and possibly gives us everything that we want in return. The mirror universe was never really explored all that much. I liked what they did with it in the original. They never did it in Next Generation, and don't know that I really cared for it very much in Deep Space Nine. And they only did one in Enterprise, which was cool. It was all right. But I think after Enterprise, the biggest question was, okay, so where do you go with that from now? Because it was like, what happens next? And now you're basically seeing literally what happens next, because Discovery happens it's 90 years after Archer and 10 years before Kirk or something like that. But so there's a lot of different places that they can go with it, especially since, and again, I'm going to go make a bold prediction here, they might introduce a possibility that there's more than just one parallel universe.
Well, see, that was going to be a question I was going to ask you. Was I haven't seen this week's episode yet. So, but in the last episode, when they found out they were in the mirror universe, they were talking about an emperor that was an overlord emperor, like the worst badass emperor that the Terran Empire ever had. Now, we know this takes place before Kirk, who was supposed to be the Emperor Tiberius, and he was supposed to be the badass.
Right.
Who do you think the Emperor is? Do you think it's going to be revealed that maybe it's like Archer? And have an old man Scott Bakula cameo appearance?
No, because Archer dies at the end of the Enterprise episode, and his Ensign Hoshi actually winds up becoming the Empress. I don't think it's her, because I got the impression it was a guy. But I mean, in this day and age,
a girl can be just as much a badass. So, I mean, it could be Hoshi. Maybe we're going to get a surprise appearance by Hoshi, but then, unless she found the Fountain of Youth, she should be dead by then. I don't know. I mean, it might be one of those surprises where it was a little used character that they're playing up, because they seem to be... I mean, the whole Klingon War was something that was mentioned in passing in one episode of Star Trek over 50 years of existence, and they made an entire series about it. They saw that wasn't going very well, so that they decided to go into the mirror universe, which I think has a lot more possibilities, because it's literally a different universe, and you can do whatever the fuck you want. I mean, for all the intents and purposes of them saying, oh, that we were in the Prime Universe the whole time, no, you were not. Stop lying, okay? I would rather you just tell me the truth and say that it was a parallel universe. It wasn't the Prime Universe. It wasn't the Kelvin Universe. It was another parallel universe. I mean, for God's sakes, Worf visited 20,000 different parallel universes just coming home from a Batlift tournament. So, you know, now that they've scoped up, I think it was funny that the truth comes out that they had to make a jump 133 times, not to get the specs on the cloaking device, which we called as BS from the very beginning, but really to figure out how to go into this other universe. I was like, okay, thank you, because the original explanation you gave us was bullshit. So, you know,
I still stand there in the Kelvin universe. Just too many things tie into the Kelvin timeline that JJ created, but you know that's neither here nor there.
It's similar to the Kelvin, because the last thing I read was that JJ somehow or another actually owns the rights to the current Star Trek stuff. Like, if you notice, everything Star Trek these days is either Discovery or Kelvin Universe. You don't see anything from the original or even Next Generation properties or anything like that.
Right, it's Paramount. Paramount's not releasing. Yeah. Paramount's not allowing a lot of the original props, special effects, whatever else to be released to CBS, since the separation between the two. Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just saying, from day one, I said Discovery should not be taken, regardless of its SJW politics and everything else. I always stated that it shouldn't be within the Prime timeline because it doesn't fit the Prime timeline.
No, not at all.
And what's presented, you forget about the corporation backgrounds and just go off of what's presented. It's presented Kelvin. Everything there is what was presented within the 3 Star Trek movies that J.J. Abrams had created with the Kelvin timeline. So just call it the Kelvin timeline.
But it's not the Kelvin timeline, though. It's its own individual timeline, separate from both. Because think about it, Kirk's father dies in the Kelvin timeline. Everything changes from that moment on. In the mirror universe, the change happened way before Kirk. And in this universe, Kirk isn't even introduced yet. So there's at least 4, possibly 5 different parallel universes happening right now, okay? Because you have the original Prime, the original Mirror. Even though they're in the Mirror universe right now and they're calling this Prime, I'm calling BS. I'm saying no, both the universe that they came from and the Mirror one they're in right now are still 2 different parallel universes from the 2 from the original series, and the Kelvin is a 5th one. But I'll tell you what, all the continuity issues that they've had over 50 years of existence, they have a way to explain it now.
I'm the opposite. I know Brian's being kind of quiet because he's not much of a Star Trek fan, but maybe because he's not a Star Trek. Well, maybe not being too much of a Star Trek fan, you could be the objective party in this. I think part of what's hurting Star Trek now is the fact that there is too many storylines or timelines where it's kind of diluting its own stories. Too many times they retcon their own stories and then they just turn around and say, well, it's because it's an alternate universe or it's an alternate timeline or whatever else, instead of just staying with one continuous interconnecting story.
Right.
In some way, shape, or form. I'll let you answer that too, Dan. But from a fresh perspective, Brian, do you feel that would be a fair assessment of why the decline in the Star Wars universe or Star Trek universe?
Yeah, I would. It's starting to put Terminator to shame at this point. Just from what I've seen. But yeah, I think it gets to a point where, like, okay, look, we were talking about Deadpool earlier, and Deadpool, he made it perfect. Because the X-Men series has always been the same way. Continuity hasn't really been one of their forefront issues. You know, I mean, you even got Deadpool making jokes about X-Men saying, you know, oh, which timeline is this? We're only two professors and one Warrior Stewart, you know? Like, these timelines get so confusing. And I think it gets to a point where people just don't care anymore because they don't know where it goes.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that has a lot to do with a lot of the problems now. And, you know, me being a Star Wars guy, I've got this, you know, one cohesive canon timeline that I can follow now. You know, and I don't have to worry about time travel or jumping dimensions or jumping universes or alternate realities, you know. And it's almost like they're making Star Trek entirely too technical, and it's not as simple as it used to be anymore.
Right.
All right. Well, see, that's where I'm looking at is like one of the big things about Star Trek, which I guess can be fun for debate purposes, like when we get everybody together for Talking Trek, but for your average go-lucky TV/movie watcher, it gets awfully freaking confusing with as many different timelines and storylines and multi-universes that Star Trek has created in everything. And really, let's be honest, they created it to handle inconsistencies within their storyline. Rather than just saying, hey, we made a fuck up, we made a boo-boo, they turn around, oh no, it was an alternate timeline, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, no, it's not because of all the inconsistencies, it's because they literally came out and said why they did it. Because I'm going to change the words a little bit. They didn't want to have to worry about canon and being inconsistent with canon. They wanted a clean slate so they could tell the story any way they wanted to. I call that lazy writing. One of the cool things about Star Wars, like you guys both just said, is that it's one canon, it's one continuity. Okay? Chris, you and I were both in wrestling.
Yes.
Could you imagine, okay, if Vince McMahon turned around and said one day that Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan never actually met in the ring?
Unfortunately, there's already things that show that they have. So yeah, it would confuse the shit out of the fan base who may be coming in late or something of that nature, or even the fan bases that knows that it has already taken place.
Right. Okay. One of the historical moments in wrestling is when WWF bought WCW, and the eternal argument of who was the better federation and who was the better champion, Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan, was finally determined, well, as best you can in wrestling anyway, when they finally met. Okay, now imagine someone turning around and say, oh no, that never happened. What? It's like what we were talking about before. One of the favorite things that Christine and I like to say is another reboot, DC. Or like what Brian just said about the Deadpool reference. Wait, which X-Men continuity are we talking about here? It's when you start fucking around with continuities, and you start saying, oh, well, that didn't happen there, that happened here, but not here. What? One of the coolest Star Trek episodes of all time was the one where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy go back to the 1940s, and they meet, oh God, what the hell was her name? Real name was Judy Collins. Bridge Across Forever.
Yeah, I was about to say that's the one where they went through that rock thing, that the Guardian of Forever or whatever.
Yeah, the Guardian of Forever. And because McCoy saves her, there is no Federation for them to go back to. And Kirk has to, kill or allow the person that he loves dearly, because God forbid he didn't fall in love in an episode.
He was a whore.
And let her die. And McCoy says, my God, you know what you just did, Jim? And Spock says, he knows, Doctor, he knows. Well, and then time is restored and they all go back to their ship. So they introduce the idea of a parallel universe and a different continuity, but then they fix it. That doesn't happen in Star Trek.
Except for one time.
Except for one time. And it's no coincidence that it's considered the best episode of all time.
I'd have to argue it. I still say Trouble with Tribbles. Or the episode of Star Trek. Or the episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where Q had everybody stuck in Nottingham. Captain, I protest. I am not a merry man.
Yes, that is. I was actually just on.
Were you? Was it? Moving on, we have two major deaths to talk about. Go ahead.
I have one thing I want to share with you guys real quick. On YouTube, I think it was just yesterday, I saw the newest. Are you guys familiar with the Mandela effect?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Well, on YouTube, there's a big craze going on right now called the Mandela effect. Basically, movies and TV shows are changing from the way we remember them. One of the most famous ones in Star Wars being that we remember Darth Vader said, Luke, I am your father. And now he says, no, I am your father. And it's like, but it was Luke, it wasn't no. And so now there's one in Star Trek. Are you ready? I forget the guy's name, but he shows us clips of Star Trek Next Generation. And according to this guy, Captain Picard carries around or is constantly holding a crystal, like a huge crystal, like not a little one that you see in New Age shops. Like this thing's fucking huge. Carrying around in crystal every time he's in his ready room. So every time he's talking to somebody, he's playing with this crystal. And supposedly, the crystal is seen in 70 of the, however, over 100 episodes of Star Trek Next Generation. So the guy says, do you ever remember seeing Picard ever holding a crystal in his hand, let alone constantly? And us Star Trek people are like, we all have to have OCD because the minutia that we remember over Star Trek things. Like, okay, he has the fish tank in the wall between his office and space, with the lionfish in there. He's always ordering Earl Grey tea.
Which is what I remember him always having in his hand, or a data pad.
Right. Okay. Not once, because a lot of people responded to this. Not once does anybody ever, including me, remember him holding a crystal once, let alone a gazillion times. Okay, at least 70 times according to this thing. And they're saying it's a Mandela effect. I call bullshit. I don't think it's a Mandela effect. I don't think it has anything to do with real-life time travel. I think somebody screwed around with the scenes from the original series episode and managed to put a crystal in the man's hand in the episode, in the scenes. It's called special effects. People look it up.
Yeah. I mean, you can go on Netflix right now and watch the Next Generation. Go ahead, go through all the episodes. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a crystal in his hand. Moving along, though, because we are really close on time here. And it's funny that we mentioned Netflix because that will be the quote-unquote movie picks of the week. I think it'd be fun to make a Netflix pick of the week. So go ahead and think about that while I go ahead and announce that we do have 2 major deaths to discuss here. As we normally do on Breaking the Fourth Wall, we bring you the news of people that passed away. Because we've been gone for a while, we didn't get a chance to report this one as it happened. But Fast Eddie Clarke, the original guitarist of Motorhead and the last surviving member of the band, has passed away at 67 years old. So now every member of Motorhead is now on the ground. The band no longer physically exists. So I definitely wanted to bring mention of that. I don't know if either of you guys are Motorhead fans, but unfortunately we lost the last surviving member of a legendary band. Also, tragically, we lost Dolores O'Riordan, the lead singer of the Cranberries, on New Year's Eve. Or I'm sorry, not on New Year's Eve. That was when did she die? She died at 46 years old. She was in London recording new material. No sources have reported yet of her cause of death. Just that it was unexpected. And that was very recently, like this week, she had passed on. In fact, I think it was yesterday, to be the exact.
I believe it was yesterday. Yeah.
To be exact on it. So, two shocking deaths within the music world, guys. Any thoughts or anything to both the Cranberries and Motorhead?
Well, Brian's not saying anything, so I guess I'll go first. I'm not really that familiar with Motorhead, and I apologize, but I know that Motorhead began and ceased to exist within
pretty much a year.
I want to say, yeah. So that's both shocking and a shame that a band that has existed and ceased to exist have everybody who passed away already. But I am familiar with the Cranberries because we used to play the Cranberries on my college radio station, or one of the many that I used to work with. And I had to do some math on it, and then Trish looked it up for me to confirm. She was only 47. I believe that's what she said.
46.
Because I was 40. What?
According to the report, 46.
46? Okay,
yeah.
So she wasn't quite 47 yet. So, but basically, literally 10 years younger than me. And when they say died suddenly, now, Chris, you and I were both musicians. You know what died suddenly usually means.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it usually means depression mixed with champagne and alcohol and other fun things that managers and bookies are able to get you on the road. Pretty much the same killer cocktail that happens in pro wrestling.
Yeah. So it's a shame. It's a shame that, and to me they're just kids, that these kids had to leave the world so early. I don't like talking about death. I'm a cancer survivor, so I kind of had my own brush with it myself, but even more so because I have a son with muscular dystrophy. I consider every day that him and I get to share the planet together as a blessing. But that being said, being a cancer survivor and someone who has a son with muscular dystrophy, everybody, not just you two, but everybody that listens to the show, enjoy every day that you can. Because you really don't know when your last day is going to be. So stop worrying about the past. Stop worrying about the future. Live for today, and just make every day, the best day that you can make it for yourself and everybody that you see that day.
and definitely we here at Fourth Wall, as we always do, when we give these unfortunate announcements, we obviously thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of those we lost. But Dan's absolutely right. I mean, we can't dwell on the past, or to quote Yoda, do not mourn those who have become one with the Force. You know, rejoice for them because they have. You know, but live your life every day. If you dwell on the fact of what you lost, you'll never pay attention to what you gained. So, Brian, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's move on to the movie picks of the week. Like I said before, with the movie picks, I thought it'd be fun this time because Netflix had just recently dropped on some really great movies and TV shows. So I thought it'd be fun to give a Netflix pick of the week. And if you guys don't mind, I'll start off. They put on the Godfather trilogy.
Oh, I'm going to have to go check that out.
So, absolutely, that's my pick of the week. One of the timeless trilogies from Francis Ford Coppola. It just, you know, Al Pacino in his prime to when he wasn't so primed. But still, just an excellent, excellent story. If you like mobster movies, you know, I'm going to tell you straight out, fuck Scarface. All reincarnations. Godfather was the one. You need to see this movie if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
Brian?
I'm going to go a different route. There's a movie on there that Kirsty showed me called Spectral. And I don't know if you guys have watched this or not. It's a Netflix original. It's about this... this epidemic that's kind of taking over a city, and it's actually these ghosts that are coming through. It's this weird, like, ghostly organism that they can't see unless they have these certain goggles, and they send in this military unit to try to take them out. It's actually, I thought it was going to be one of those B-rated horror movies, but it was actually a pretty good sci-fi flick, and it's a really good popcorn. So it's called Spectral.
I have to check that out. I've seen it in my recommended list, but I've never given it a second thought. I'll have to check that out. Dan.
I almost watched that yesterday, Spectral. Okay, so I'm not sure if this was Netflix. I want to say it was because I've been on a Asian kung fu movie thing the past couple 3 days. I was watching Netflix. I'm pretty sure that's where I watched it on. But I'm going to go with a movie called The Mermaid. And it's really not what you think, okay? Because I was flipping through the movies, and Netflix gives you a lot of movies to choose from. And I saw The Mermaid, and I was like, the teenage one that Disney made? But I'm like, you know how you can see the cover of the movie? I'm like, no, that doesn't look like that. So I looked on the info, and it's basically this guy who owns this multinational corporation and is not unbeknownst to him, destroying the mermaids that live in the ocean just outside, I guess in the China Sea. And this mermaid makes pretend that she's a human in order to kill the guy so that they would turn off the sonar. And they wind up falling in love with each other. And instead of her killing him, she saves him, and then the corporation tries to kill her, and then he goes and saves her, and then they, I won't say what happens at the end, but I think if you get a chance to watch it, you might enjoy it. You have to watch it with a grain of salt, because it is a Chinese, like I said, it's a Chinese kung fu movie, so when everybody starts flying around with magical superpowers, again, take it with a grain of salt. That's what they do. But if you like that type of stuff and you don't mind, reading what they're saying, because they're saying it in Chinese, if you don't mind reading the subtitles, then it's a cool little movie. It's fun.
All right. Well, we reached that point of the show. Brian, tell everybody where they can find you.
You guys can find me right here on Realm of Mist Entertainment with Breaking the Fourth Wall, as well as my YouTube channel, the Star Wars Canon Library, where we keep all the Star Wars canon in chronological order. Make sure to check out the website. It is www.starwarscanonlibrary.com. Give us a like on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube.
And Dan, where can they find you?
They'll have to find me on realmofthemist.com because I haven't been on Facebook since we went on hiatus.
Well, that's fair enough. And of course, you can find me everywhere on realmofthemist.com, Breaking the Fourth Wall, Journal of the Jedi. Once in a while, I'll appear on Star Wars Canon Library or War of the Stars, and of course, I can help out on Talking Trek, America's Pop Culture Magazine, and coming soon, Dan, coming soon, Academy Earth.
Academy Earth, yes. If you think that you have a headache from parallel universes and time travel in Star Trek, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Just think of it this way: Academy Earth. I'm writing one of the stories. That should be enough to make your head hurt. All right, guys, it's been a blast. We're back for another 9 episodes, guys. So we'll catch you next week. Stay tuned on RadioCast FM. Up next, Journal of the Jedi. Guys, have a good one.
Hey, take it easy.